Hi seniors, this is Mrs. Fredrickson from the counseling office. Today I'm going to talk about recommendation letters. We started this presentation a few years ago when teachers and counselors found that students were not approaching the process in a productive way. For example, students were asking for recommendations a day before the due date or asking for a reference without giving any information. We realized that with a little guidance, students could learn some simple steps that would not only improve the recommendation writer's experience, but also improve the quality of the reference. Everyone will eventually request a reference. Most people request several throughout their life. For example, I had to request 3 from past employers for my job here at WRHS. As a senior, you may need a reference for a scholarship, a college, a residential hall, an internship, or a job. These references help select candidates who will be a good fit for an organization. It expands beyond the application and shows another dimension of the student. For example, in a scholarship application, they may ask for grades, activities, and the transcript, but the reference adds information about character and whether an applicant would be a good investment. Even if you do not end up requesting a reference this year, the tips shared today will be relevant in the future. Before we address some simple tips for requesting recommendations, I like to put the senior year in perspective. First, what do colleges and scholarships actually consider in the application process? Kansas colleges consider GPA and test scores for admission. Students who meet the qualified admission requirements are simply accepted, and references are not needed. Students who apply to KU Honors will have their GPA, test scores, rigor of curriculum, and the essay responses considered. But again, references are not needed. For scholarships, everyone will have a little different requirement. Most will include an essay, which honestly is a very important part of the application and how many scholarships are actually awarded. Some will require a reference. Many colleges outside of Kansas, particularly the ones that are more competitive or accept the Common App, follow what's called the holistic approach. If you look at this graph, you will notice that half is usually grades in a rigorous curriculum and test scores. This is the academics. The academic piece is what gets the application read. It's actually not what gets the student in the holistic approach. Once a student has met the minimum academic requirements, the other part is what becomes important. That includes activities, leadership, essay responses, special qualities, and of course references. These are what will tip the scale or not in a student's favor. Each application process is different. You will need to research these carefully and put forth attention to every aspect of the application in order to put yourself in the best possible position. As a senior, what do you really have control of in the application process? Well, let's start with the academics piece. At this point, you might be planning to take the ACT again. However, your score is fairly set. It's not going to rise by a couple points or more. And as for your GPA and class rigor, you already have 6 of 8 semesters completed. Most applications are due first semester of senior year. And certainly senior grades are important. However, decisions are usually made based on the grades you've already earned. Moving on to activities, it's not uncommon to find seniors who have almost nothing in grades 9 to 11, and suddenly they have a list of activities for grade 12. Please do not do that. It actually reflects very poorly on a student and decreases their chances. Colleges expect that competitive students have been involved throughout high school, and senior year will be a time to continue that commitment and typically also take on leadership positions. Therefore, these are set. Likewise, special talents. This may refer to something like a state or nationally recognized athlete or debater or musician or chess champion. Maybe a student has a standout service project. Senior year will not be the time for a student to suddenly develop a special talent. This is already set. That takes us to the essay. This is a critical part of an application and is meant to give the reader a compelling reason to accept the student. We are lucky at WRHS to have senior English teachers who allocate time to address college and scholarship essays in their curriculum. I encourage you to take advantage of the feedback you receive. That takes us to the references or recommendation. Students often are surprised to hear that they have control in this area. What does that mean? Well, let's say I have two similar students in regards to GPA, ACT, and activities. One student busts into my office without notice. They are in a hurry and tell me that I have no idea how busy they are. They practically demand, not ask, that I write a reference, and by the way, it's due tomorrow. The other student sets an appointment, comes to my office prepared, not rushed, gives me a resume, and asks if I'd be willing to write a reference that's due next month. Which student do you think will probably receive a more favorable reference? Students, you have control over how you approach your recommenders. You have worked throughout high school to develop strong relationships. This is the time to benefit from your hard work. These 6 tips I'll share with you are straightforward. You may see them as common sense. However, every year, teachers and counselors encounter too many students who approach requesting references in a haphazardly way that does not benefit them or maintain positive relationships. First, ask someone who knows you well. While some colleges may ask for specific subject teachers, most leave the decision up to you. Do not ask someone who you had a conflict with in the past. I've had teachers contact me flabbergasted that the student whose parents took an issue to the principal felt it appropriate. What am I supposed to say about that student's independence and maturity, they ask me. Typically, you should ask a junior teacher who likes you, who can speak to your positive traits. It doesn't need to be the class that you have the highest grade. That information is on your transcript. This is the list of traits that teachers are asked to evaluate on the Common Application, which is accepted by around 900 colleges. Take a moment to read the list. A few of these pertain to academics. However, the majority pertain to your character. Please look at this before deciding who will write your reference. These are the topics covered in a recommendation letter. Who can answer these best for you? Ask early. In our handbook on page 12, we have a policy of 2 weeks' notice. However, I recommend much more. I think 4 to 6 weeks should be a minimum. In a teacher's day, they teach 6 periods and have a short amount of time to eat, plan, and grade. Frankly, they are not writing recommendations at school. They are writing these at home. And a good recommendation takes time. I usually spend 1 to 2 hours on one. And teachers have families and activities outside of school. They have to plan when they will write your reference. The more time, the better. Also keep in mind that teachers and counselors aren't available over the breaks. One of our counselors was on the ski slope last year when she received a request for a recommendation that was due January 1st. Needless to say, this was not enough time. Ask personally. Send an email asking to set a time to discuss them writing a reference for you. Please don't barge in on them. It's not polite, and the teacher or counselor is not going to be ready to focus on your needs. Be thankful. This is not part of their normal duty, and while they are happy to support you, it does go beyond their normal teaching responsibility. A little appreciation goes a very long way in this process. Provide necessary materials. Be organized. Know exactly what your recommender needs to do and by when. Having a folder with your resume, any forms, and the exact instructions can be helpful. I have a questionnaire that is useful in providing additional information that the teacher may not know. Remember that your recommender has many students, and you cannot assume that they know everything about you. Exercise patience. A gentle reminder as the due date approaches is absolutely acceptable. However, badgering a recommender or demanding that the reference is sent before the actual due date does not help you. I have even had parents contact me, asking me why a reference hasn't been sent when the due date was over a month away. Trust me, you do not want your recommender to be annoyed when they are writing about you. Send a thank you note. Sending a thank you note is an extra touch that reflects very well on you. It's best to send it before you find out the college or scholarship decision. I cannot tell you how much it means to a recommender to receive a note of thanks. This shows maturity and continues to strengthen the relationship with your teachers and counselors. This short video from Khan Academy complements the information discussed in this presentation. I hope you found the information useful. These simple steps will help you have more control over the quality of your recommendations and therefore increase your chances of standing out in an application process. Best of luck to you in all of your future endeavors.
So when you're getting a recommendation letter, it needs to be from an academic teacher. So those are core subjects: history, science, math, social studies, languages. When you have a recommendation from a theater teacher, director, or band leader, those are helpful, but they're not what we're looking for in an academic required teacher recommendation.
I always encourage students to reach out to the teachers that know them best. Not the teachers that gave them the highest grade, although those might be the same people, but a teacher that knows you well is a great place to start.
Oftentimes for teachers, it's going to be teachers in their most recent years, their junior and or senior year. These teachers can usually include specific examples or anecdotes about their intellectual curiosity or their participation in the classroom.
And it's always wonderful, if it's at all possible, to get that full range. So possibly one letter from a humanities teacher, meaning English, history, language, and so forth. Another from math, science, if possible. That doesn't always work, but it doesn't help to have two English teacher recommendations. They tend to say the same type of thing regarding your writing and your involvement in class.
The week before school, plan out on a calendar when you'll be asking your teachers and when you'll ask them to send their letter. Give them ample time, I say almost a month.
Talking to teachers about the things that you would like for them to highlight is definitely a key component, because as much as teachers are, working as hard as they can, they're often writing multiple recommendations. And so it's easy either to forget or even to, not highlight those things or overlook those things that might make, a very big difference in understanding an applicant.
What I recommend for students is when they go up to that teacher, instead of handing them a resume, which sort of lets them know, here's my grades, here's maybe my GPA, my SAT scores, and all my activities at the school, that's going to be in other parts of the application. Teachers don't need to talk about that. But we really want from what admissions people really want from teachers is, how is that student in that class? So what I recommend for students to do is, sit down with that teacher, maybe give them 4 or 5 bullet points of, here's why I asked you, here's why I really wanted you to write my letter of recommendation.
What are things that you want to make sure comes across that maybe you can't say or feel shy, expressing in the personal statement, or maybe maybe in the additional information section.
We are going to be looking at these recommendations to, again, see how they're going to contribute to our campus and how they're going to contribute to the classroom specifically, how they're going to get involved. And then sometimes we can also pull on things like their resilience and their excitement and love of learning. So those are all different things that we can gather from recommendations.